recent fitness trends, it's been good. Like over the last 10 years or so, I think people are much more going towards, strength training, resistance training versus, just straight up doing cardio. But I just think it's like investing, like if you want to day trade, that's like try to make a buck quick. Like that's your cardio. You burn some calories quick, but the long-term like compounding effect of it is, your long-term investing is strength training, put on that muscle, build your metabolism, and your body becomes more efficient at partitioning nutrients.
Welcome to Iron Summit, the podcast where we dive deep into the art and science of becoming your best self, blending expert insights on strength training, smart recovery, optimal nutrition, and mindset mastery to help you elevate your game.
We're live.
Super special episode today.
Super. Why is that, Max?
If it were up to me, we'd just call it here. End the podcast.
Just restart the podcast every single time at this number. Yep. All right. How was Lehigh?
Awesome. See, I got a hat.
I see that hat.
It was
Is
awesome.
that new?
Yeah. I didn't have any Lehigh hats. I like hats. So got a Lehigh hat. It's awesome. Such a cool wrestling culture. And when you're competing, it's so easy to get lost in just like focus on competition. You kind of lose and appreciate. I mean, it's like cool to wrestle in front of a packed race hall, obviously, but you don't get to appreciate the culture as much as when you go back as just a spectator.
Yeah, that's sweet, dude. It is funny how it doesn't feel like it when you're there, and then not that it doesn't feel like it, but it's like you kind of don't realize it until you leave a little bit because you're kind of locked in on competing and not thinking about, how cool the opportunity is. Yeah, it's weird, man. You ever watch like an old match or something and you're like, dang, I was doing that?
Yeah, for sure. You're like, whoa. So it gets
like,
even weirder
cool
as you get older. Yeah, it's really cool. I think that'd be one of the things I'd stress on all wrestlers, but particularly, college wrestlers. You have a really, really cool opportunity. Try and focus on that rather than getting so nervous you can't appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the coolest things too, and kind of a cool thing with this, man, it's like we live in such a cool time with the internet that like everything's pretty much documented for better or for worse. I guess there's some pros and cons to that, but like you can go back and watch your matches. There's some matches I wish there weren't films of on me, but there's also some matches, it'd be fun to show your kids and like,
for sure.
It's cool.
Yep, for sure. All right. So for today's very special episode, we're doing underrated, overrated.
Over under, baby.
Over under on different fitness topics. We'll just kind of alternate.
Yeah. Okay.
These are based on, I don't know about you, Ryan, but all the time I get asked about all these things. So we'll just give our honest opinion, underrated, overrated, and then move on to the next one.
Okay. You want to start or you want me to start?
I'll start.
Okay.
Does that mean I give you the topic?
Yeah, that's what that means.
Okay.
Hey, if you said you're going to start, you better know what you're doing.
Yeah, I'll start. All right. Wearables.
Okay. Like fitness wearables. So we're defining that as like an Apple Watch, a Whoop, a Garmin.
Yeah, not clothing in general. That's overrated.
Maybe it's underrated. No, I think wearables, I think they have their place, man. Like they're cool. I think 99% of the time, any fitness tracker that I've used and continue to use, I mean, I'm wearing a Whoop right now, right? Like I have a Garmin, I have a Whoop, like I had an Oura Ring for a while. Like I think they're really cool just because I'm interested in that stuff. They're absolutely not necessary. And I think there's definitely a portion of the population that it's probably not good for. I almost think like if I was competing in wrestling, it wouldn't be good to have a Whoop on or a Ring or something because you can get in your own head pretty easily with that stuff. And I think objectively, it's good to have data sometimes, but also there's a lot of studies on how like off these things are. I think one of the coolest things is like if you're going for a run and your Garmin's tracking how far you're going and kind of keeping your pace and stuff like that. It's cool to be able to like measure back to back stuff or how much time you have, or like in between sets, I can look on my Garmin how much time I'm spending resting. But like,
Yep.
do you really need it? I think they're overrated. I don't think you
Overrated.
really need them. Yeah.
Agreed. I'd say overrated. The only thing they're really good for is like the simplest data, like you said, like distance traveled or rest time. I wear the Aura ring literally to like, I don't really trust the HRV on it at all. So I don't look at it, but I like resting heart rate, waking resting heart rate, which I could also just do by like with a stopwatch and my finger on my neck. But
Probably be the same accuracy.
yeah, but like the simplest data, it's easy to collect that stuff through wearables. But yeah, I agree. Overrated.
I like them. I like, this is not me saying
Me
don't use
too.
them, but I
I'm
do
wearing
think
one
they're
right now.
overrated.
You're wearing
Yeah,
one right now.
right.
But they're overrated
Yeah, for
for
sure.
sure.
Okay, next one. Hot button topic. I feel like this hasn't been a thing except for the last like 2 to 3 years, but seed oils. What's up, guys? If you're looking to level up your training, click the link in the description and check out the Iron Summit Gains Emporium. Our strength training plans are designed to help you pack on muscle, and with our software, you can track every workout right from your phone. Plus, you'll have direct access to us for any questions along the way. Don't just train, level up your training.
Ooh, this is hard to say like overrated, underrated. How about like anti-seed oils? Is that overrated or underrated? Because like it's hard to like over or underrate seed oils by themselves, but let's say the movement against seed oils is overrated. I think you can probably benefit from eating less processed seed oils. Especially you look at the process of making some of these seed oils, it's quite terrifying. Like they're literally like soaking stuff in bleach or using petroleum in different steps of the refining process. But that being said, I think there is no large scale study ever done that showed a negative health impact on seed oils or from seed oils. And it's like putting the cart before the horse. A lot of the times, these things like worrying about your seed oil intake when you're going out like 3 nights a week is crazy. So for most people, I'd say overrated. If you're really trying to optimize your health, then you can start worrying about seed oils and your consumption of them. I just have like, I don't really eat seed oils because I don't eat much processed foods and I cook with olive oil or butter. I like don't even like the taste of like canola oil or the other seed
You don't,
oils.
you
What are
don't,
the other
you
seed
don't like,
oils?
you don't like
Do you
canola
know?
oil when you're coming out of a like, you're coming out of like a avalanche game and they're like grilling hot dogs right on the road like that. You don't like that smell?
I like the smell. I don't like what I don't. I mean, let's put if you're like judging what's worse for you, the hot dog or the seed oils on the hot dog is way worse for you. So I'm gonna go with overrated, but there's something to it. I'm not
Yeah.
like saying it's a whole hoax, but probably overrated.
I'm with you. I think in college, I think I went a little bit deeper on that than I should have, where I was like, these are so bad. You shouldn't be like, I think you don't need to be like crazy worried about it, but I do think it's something you should probably try to reduce. Like, I don't personally like use seed oils to cook. That being said, like, if you're a human, you're probably consuming them. You go out to a restaurant, like 90% of
Yeah,
restaurants are cooking in that. Um, Even like you grab like a bar or something, you're on the road and you grab a bar, like it's probably got some seed oils in it. Like it's in everything. I think it's kind of like the whole microplastics thing. Like you should probably reduce it, but like overall, like you said, there's a hierarchy there. And I think you try to do better, but like don't let perfection be the enemy of good.
yeah.
Um,
Well, it's
and
funny. Both
go
for the
ahead.
wearables and the seed oils, we both said overrated, but then we both are like, we do wearables and we're conscious of our seed oil intake.
Well, I
So,
like, dude, Lane Norton is so funny with this stuff. Like he always like
yeah.
yells at people that are like seed oil fear mongering. And he's like, it's not that big of a deal. Uh, but I think it's kind of like, and we probably have this later on too, but like diet sodas, like the whole camp of like, should you have artificial sweeteners or not? And I think everything in moderation. I don't. personally, I think you should probably try to avoid it, but like, yeah, I wouldn't like lose sleep over having a little bit of canola oil.
Yeah. And like, I mean, I think when I don't eat out for a long time and I eat out, I feel kind of crappy. So maybe there is something to it. But I'm going to still go with overrated. Let's go. Next one is testosterone boosters.
Dude, I honestly don't feel I don't think I can really talk on this. Like I always just saw that as snake oil. I've never really dabbled into that stuff. I guess I'd like you to define, like, what do you mean by testosterone boosters? Are we talking about like you take some ashwagandha, or you take some like pill from a gas station, or you're talking about, you know what I'm saying?
I'd
Like,
say I generalize it and we can get into the nuances. Any supplement that claims to boost your testosterone,
I
that's
would,
not testosterone itself.
yeah, I'd say probably just junk. Like, I think that stuff's overrated.
Overrated.
I also just think most of that stuff, you got to be really careful with the supplement industry in general. Um, and I think most of that stuff like probably isn't like made with really good, clean ingredients. Um, I just avoid it. I think there's a lot more, like, you want to boost your testosterone, get good sleep, have optimal training volume, have optimal sleep or recovery, nutrition, um, cold tub stuff, doing saunas. Like, I'm not a big fan of, taking Rhino, whatever, from the gas station. What do
Yeah.
you think?
I think in general, overrated. There's not really any good large body of evidence that says any of these work. I think there's some stuff on ashwagandha actually that shows it can improve your testosterone, but it's really more from reducing your cortisol,
Yeah.
which ashwagandha is really effective at. And then the downstream effect of that is increasing your testosterone. So maybe there's something to ashwagandha. What I will say, there's two, I think, that there might be something to outside of ashwagandha. One is high dose vitamin D3 and K2. I think there's some legit science around that. It's just good for you anyway, especially if you live in a less sunny place
Yeah. Do you do
like
that in
we
the
do.
summer? Like in the summer when
Yeah, I
it's
take it year round,
okay.
the D3 and K2. I just like that stuff. They have it at Costco now. Big win.
Costco's
Yeah,
sweet, man. They got some great
yeah.
supplements at Costco.
And then the second one, which I think this makes a lot of sense because it's just a precursor to testosterone. And I know like in the US, this is an over the counter supplement. In Europe, it's highly regulated, is DHEA. I think DHEA is WADA legal now. It wasn't for a while, but that one, you're literally taking a precursor to testosterone. So it makes sense that would increase your testosterone. And I've seen that myself in when I get my blood work done. If I'm taking DHEA consistently, I have higher testosterone numbers. Again,
Yeah.
that's
Are,
an
where,
anecdote. So
where are you getting something like that? Like, you're not just buying that off of, a shelf at a grocery store,
yeah, I
or
just
are
go
you?
with a reputable. No, I go with now I'm not going to remember. I think like Thorn or Supplements by Design, I think is the name. Like you got to go. I go with like a high quality supplement,
Yeah.
and then I buy the DHEA from there.
Gotcha. Okay.
Health by is that called Health by Design?
I think that's
I think
right.
that's what it's called. Yeah, it's a high quality. But I think like if you're gonna get DHEA, get it from a high quality supplement manufacturer.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Is like you got to really look at the science and try that. So I think the other thing, man, is like if you're not regularly doing blood work with stuff like that, I'm just a little skeptical on putting things in my body that I don't know the downstream effects of, especially if it's like kind of a sketchier area. So like the fact that you like know that, try that, you're doing blood work, like I think that's good. But when you just like grab something because you're like, ooh, testosterone, let me take this. I just don't think that's a good
Yeah,
path to go down. And I think that's like every 17-year-old goes to it goes to the gym, kind
for
of just
sure.
starts trying stuff like
Yeah,
that.
just like off of GNC, something that says overall overrated. You're
Yeah,
gonna boost your testosterone way more from eating healthy, sleeping well, and doing those kind of things. So overall
yeah.
overrated.
Okay. What about carnivore diet? just like all
Oh,
meat. Um, I think there's people that are a little more realistic now that'll throw like some like fruits and rice in there maybe. But what do you think of carnivore diet?
overrated. Like, and I don't think there's much nuance to it. Like, you're not meant to eat just meat as a human. Can you do it? Sure. You can eat just vegetables too. It's called being vegan. That's also overrated. Um, it's just not not a great diet. It's not balanced at all. I think like if you wanted to like maybe try it out, do a cleanse, you're gonna get the benefits of being in ketosis because you're gonna be eating a ketogenic diet, but then
If
just
you're
be
doing it
keto.
correct, yeah,
Yeah. Just be
I
keto and
agree.
get some fiber in at least like so I don't know. I think overrated.
I'm with you. I think it's overrated. I think the problem is 99% of people that do well on carnivore, it's because they go from like a highly processed diet to like you're eating like three different things. It's really hard to eat like a high processed diet if you're just eating meat and like eggs. It's just not going to happen. So yeah, you probably feel better, probably have less inflammation. You're eating high protein. Um, but I have yet to find somebody that's a high level like athlete, performer, or just like being able to do that for many, many, many years. And just, you can't convince me that's better. And then I also just think lifestyle wise, it's not worth it. Like if you're out, with your friends and you go and grab ice cream and you're not eating ice cream because you're doing carnivore, I just think it's like, I don't know. I think there's more to life
Yeah.
than, just taking it out just to take it out.
Yep. And this is coming from two huge red meat enthusiasts, but you got
Absolutely.
you got to eat a balanced diet.
Fiber is important.
All right, my turn.
Iron Summit is brought to you by Bridge Athletic. Looking for a way to streamline your training programs and deliver exceptional results? Check out our friends at Bridge Athletic. Their platform is packed with over 300 templates and 1,500 instructional videos, courtesy of subject matter experts like Exos, FMS, and Hyperice, making program design both efficient and impactful. Our listeners can take advantage of an exclusive offer. For a limited time, get your first 30 days free and your next month at 50% off when you use code Iron Summit, all caps. That's code Iron Summit, no spaces, all caps, for 30 days free plus 50% off your second month at bridgeathletic.com. Check it out and start assigning custom programs directly to your athlete's mobile device.
That's too broad of a one. I'm thinking BFR training, blood flow restriction.
So I kind of like, we played with this a little bit in college. I kind of think it's overrated. Like, I think it's probably got its place more if you're injured. But I just really don't think that like your overall volume goes down because like, yeah, it's harder, but you can't do as much weight because you have this blood flow restriction. I think everybody that I've ever done it with, it's kind of like this is a sexy thing for an Instagram video more so than like you feel good the next day because of it. And honestly, I don't know that I've done it enough to like have, like, maybe I'm talking out of turn here, but I've probably done it, 10 plus times. And I don't think that it's going to get you, like, if your goal is to squat 500 pounds, I don't think that's going to get you there. I think regular strength training is a lot better. What do you think, Max?
Yeah, agreed. I think that's like it's a modality or an application you can use if you want to make lightweight harder, but you are going to reduce the total weight you can move, which kind of is the whole key to strength training. Now, if you're like coming back from an injury and you're trying to create like metabolic stress with really light weight,
Yeah.
then that's a useful tool. Or maybe like at the end of your workout and you're not going to move your butt, you're doing an arm day and your arms are already shot and you're not going to move weight anyway, maybe throw it on for fun, but overrated.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I'm with you 100%. Okay, Max, I think you're the perfect person to ask this question because I think like when I think about your training, typically like you lean towards, if there's a scale of like really low reps, which is funny because you do powerlifting, but like really low reps to really high volume, I'd say you go towards some more volume typically. not that that's exactly what we're saying here, but kind of like high frequency training. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say overrated, but nuanced. Very
Okay.
nuanced. And I think it's really, this one comes down to, I am, and this is just personal preference. I'll get into my personal preference and then into like what like the science says, but my personal preference is I'd much rather like hit a muscle group very hard and then give it time to recover.
Mhm.
It's just more fun to me. I've seen really great results with that. I've kind of always trained that way. Whereas high frequency training, you're hitting something, every couple of days, just not in the same amount of volume. Um, I think there's a time and a place for it. Like if you're trying to do more metabolic or systemic training, maybe you're an in-season athlete and you're not trying to do the same level of tissue damage in one workout. There's a time and a place for it. I know the science basically says it doesn't matter as long as you're getting the same amount of sets in per week or for
Yeah.
whatever time parameter you want to look at. It's pretty much exactly the same for muscle growth. Now, I will go to Dr. Pat's point where like the science is kind of shows you the middle of the bell curve. I think if you're like towards the upper end of your set point, like I am, and you're trying to push muscle growth, high frequency training is just not going to cut it. You got to like really take a muscle deep into fatigue, do a lot of mechanical tension and damage in one session, and then give it time to recover. So probably where you are in your training life cycle, what your goals are, all that stuff. I'm just going to say overrated because that's my personal preference.
I think this might be my first underrated one. I agree with everything you just said. But hear me out. Like, I think for the mass majority of people, high frequency training is probably the best thing that they could do, because it is so much easier to hit 3 full body lifts in a week. If you get busy, you move a day around. It's super easy. Where like if you miss this day and you're trying to catch up on something and you're doing a split, it's a lot harder to catch up. I also think like if you're a busy individual, you just had a kid and you have, some weights in your garage, you could go hit 20 minutes of squats. And then in the evening, you could do 20 minutes of bench. And then, and like you can split up your workout and get everything in total training volume. I don't think it's the most optimal for muscle growth, but I think if you're just like, hey, I'm doing this for general health and wellness, I want to be strong, I want to be athletic, but I also like to, run or go play, I don't know, like pick up soccer, if you're doing other things, I think the easiest thing to fit into your lifestyle is like a high frequency training, 3-day a week, full body lifting plan. And I think a lot of people just are like, hey, I got to do a bro split. But they don't train like consistently enough to make that make more sense, I think.
Yeah, I agree with all that. So we'll split the difference.
Neutral. Okay. What about big guy like
it's
you?
It's my turn to ask you.
Ask you that. You're right. All right, go.
Next one. You can ask me. I probably am not going to ask you the same thing. Strength training for fat loss.
Totally underrated. I think recent fitness trends, it's been good. Like over the last 10 years or so, I think people are much more going towards, strength training, resistance training versus, just straight up doing cardio. But I just think it's like investing, like if you want to day trade, that's like try to make a buck quick. Like that's your cardio. You burn some calories quick, but the long-term like compounding effect of it is, your long-term investing is strength training, put on that muscle, build your metabolism, and your body becomes more efficient at partitioning nutrients. So yeah, I think that's underrated, but I do think that there's been a shift. Like people are more aware of that.
I agree. And depends what kind of strength training you're doing, but some of it can be just as much of a caloric expenditure as cardio.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I do think the one caveat to that is like, we're talking specifically for fat loss. I don't think that means like don't do cardio just because you're trying to put on muscle. Like there's heart health.
100%. We have a whole episode on that.
So yeah, I think we're on the same page there. That one's definitely
Straightforward.
underrated. All right, Max, you're a big guy. What do you think about stretching and mobility work?
I would say I'm split on this. It's nuanced.
Hey, pick a
This one's
side.
nuanced.
No, you got to pick a side.
Overrated, but very important. I think you can get a ton. Let's put it this way. You can get a lot of mobility work through your resistance training. I think it's actually some of the best kind of mobility work you can do. But then you have to be doing your resistance training correctly and moving through full ranges of motion, doing various movements in like different all planes of motion. So I'm saying like traditional stretching is probably a little overrated. Now, if you're doing like advanced mobility work, like FRC type stuff, pails, rails, and cars, joint prep stuff, then it's, I think, very useful. But I'm going to say like how probably most people take this, like, you know, like going and doing static stretching before or after your session. Overrated.
Yeah.
I think they've shown like you got to move in your mobility work. You can't do static stretching. I think has pretty limited science behind it, actually.
Yeah. I think I agree with that. Like, I also just think when you have, you know, a finite amount of time, it's really hard to spend a significant amount of time on this stuff. I think this is something also, like, to be fair, like, I'm asking you, we're, you know, relatively young. Like, I don't think it's like, ask me in 20 years, maybe my answer is different. But I think for the most part, like, through, you know, getting good full range of motion, you're going to get a lot of this work. And I do think that like you should warm up, and part of that is like stretching and doing like dynamic stuff, not just static stuff. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how about this? I'll say stretching, overrated, mobility work, underrated. Because I didn't know which one to pick.
You should go into politics, Max. You can't give me a straight answer.
Well, this one's so nuanced.
Everything.
So
well,
nuanced.
You see, there's two sides.
There are.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I think the other thing too is like, know yourself. Like, I know that the athletes that I know that got hurt the most were like double jointed athletes because their body couldn't keep their like their bones in place. Like, so many people tear
too overly stretchable.
Yeah.
Overly flexible.
It's not good. But then if you're like really tight, you tear a lot of stuff too. So I don't think you want to be on either end of that. And you got to know yourself. If you're starting to get too tight, you need to start stretching more. If you're already naturally like a stretch person, you'd probably benefit from, you know, packing on some muscle and like tightening up some joints.
Yep. All right, I got an easy one for you.
All right.
Creatine.
Yeah, underrated. I love creatine. I got a question for you. I'm not even gonna try to make a case against creatine, really. I think it's one of the most studied, safe supplements in the world.
Efficacious.
Yeah. Like, and there's a lot of studies now saying that you should be taking it for brain health, like a lot of different things, not just.
It's got so many applications now. It's like all the things that are like postpartum women, old people, brain health. Like, it's like literally like pretty much any application you can think of. They're like, take creatine.
Yeah. I think you should just be taking it. And my question for you, Max, is like, what about a combat athlete? I know the NCAA's got kind of this big stink against creatine because there were some wrestlers, I think in the 80s, that died from creatine just because if you're not drinking a lot of water, it's hard on your kidneys. So you're cutting, back then they're cutting 20, 30 pounds, and they blamed it on creatine. I'm not
Yeah.
like, don't
Or the
quote me on the
one
whole
big
story.
negative study on creatine that like gave it the bad connotation on the football players during 2-a-days. But I think both those cases, the wrestlers cutting weight and the football players doing 2-a-days, presence of creatine or not, their issue was dehydration, which that's objectively bad for you. So I don't think I don't even know if you put creatine in or take it out if it really makes that much of a difference. Like obviously you don't want to be taking anything that retains or pulls water into the muscles, because that's what creatine does if you're severely dehydrated. But I think the problem is being severely dehydrated, not creatine. And they've even shown it doesn't really have an effect on your hydration. It's not like you don't even need to drink that much more water taking it.
Yeah.
You should just be hydrated, period.
It is crazy how much we know / don't know. Like science constantly change. Like you used to, I don't know if you remember this, but it was I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. It's like you need to overload it. So you got to do 20 grams a day for a week, and then you get a saturated level in your muscles of creatine, and then it turned into it doesn't even matter after 30 days if you're taking the same amount of creatine every day, 5 grams a day. After 30 days, you're gonna have the same amount, even if you front loaded it, just they used to think. So it just constantly changes. I don't know.
Yeah, it does. And I've seen the creatine loading phase, but then there's so much most of the people who are doing their creatine loading phase are not counting how much creatine they're getting from natural food sources on top of their supplemental creatine.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, I think just take it. You don't need to take a ton. Take 5 grams a day, and it's really healthy for you. And it's underrated. It's starting to come around that in 5 years, you ask me, and I might say overrated because everyone's obsessed with it. And I mean, we're heading in that direction. Also, people don't realize how much creatine that you can get from particularly red meat and salmon.
Yeah.
But even chicken, any meat has quite a bit.
What about Max? So let's say you were back in college, you weren't a heavyweight, you're cutting some weight. What do you think about creatine for somebody that's cutting weight?
I would only pull it out during my water cut.
Yeah.
Just like I would you should eat healthy electrolytes the whole week besides when you're about to do your water cut, right?
Yeah.
Same thing for your creatine. So that's the way I would look at it. And you could play around with it because, I'm not sure how much it's going to change your weight. It might help make you retain a little bit of water, but if you're doing a lower dose, 5 grams, I don't know. I'd say play around with it, but probably pull it out around your water cut, just more than anything, because you don't want to be giving yourself an uphill battle that you don't need to have.
Yeah, I never took it in college when I was competing because I was kind of worried about the whole water gain thing. I'm not sure that you really gain that much.
Exactly.
But I also last couple of years at Stanford talking to some nutritionists, they're like, hey, honestly, maybe take if you're worried about it, take 3 grams a day and then cut it out, 2 or 3 days before you weigh in. So
that'd be a great approach. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was a good answer for sure.
Yep. Okay.
Right.
Your turn.
All right, Max. Intra-workout carbs.
Intra-carb workouts. Same thing, I guess.
Workouts.
That's really the same thing as an intra-workout carb. I will say, yeah, stand by it. I'll say underrated, just because I don't see that many people doing it.
Yeah.
But again, there's nuance, and I think it can be an effective tool. I think it's going to help you get a nice pump. They got to be easily digestible carbs. Can't be eating sweet potatoes intra-workout. But if you get a easily digestible carb, even a little bit of a sugary carb like a Gatorade or something, I think it can help your workout, particularly if you are cutting and your carbs are lower in general. Your glycogen stores are a little lower. It's just a way to help replace some of that. I've seen some studies, like, it doesn't really make a difference, but we'll see how those studies play out. I think it can be a useful tool, especially if you're low calorie, low carb at that point in time. It can help kind of like fill that gap if you're maybe don't have as much glycogen as usual. Would. Like right now, I'm eating a ton of food all day, so I'm not doing them. Yeah. But I think there's a time and a place for them. So I'll say underrated.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. I think most people don't think about this, and I don't think it matters until it matters. And like if you're training really intensely or the hours are getting long, like if you're in, hour and a half, 2 hour workout, or like especially I started doing this with wrestling. Didn't really think about it, and then I'd start pounding, at a water break, like just some Gatorade and getting some quick sugars and stuff. Like you feel a lot better, especially when your body's dehydrated. Or not dehydrated, just depleted of glycogen. So I do think it's important, but like if you're working out for an hour and it's, end of the day where you've had a couple meals, like I don't know that it's that important. But when you start pushing the minutes, I think runners really need to do this when you're on mile 13, 14, 15, 20, like you better be eating something if you don't want you to just like your performance to just fall off a cliff.
Yep. You got to start replacing the glycogen that you've depleted, but it takes a lot to deplete glycogen. So, yes.
And the more muscle you have, the more you're holding too.
Yep. I have a ton of glycogen. I'm just kidding. All right. My turn. This one, I'll ask you because I know my opinion on this one. Barefoot style training shoes.
Yeah. I'm actually a really big fan of barefoot style training shoes. I don't think I did this for a long time. I don't know why, but in college, like didn't think about this a lot. I was wearing, we'd get, our athletic running shoes and I'd be squatting and deadlifting in like running shoes. Makes a huge difference when you don't have a squishy pad under your heel. I think it's just not super practical. And I don't know if I love going barefoot, especially in, certain, like if you're in a public gym, like probably not if you're cool with the athlete's foot and ringworm, like go for it. But I just think, especially for leg stuff, like if you're benching, like it's not a big difference, but you want some kind of solid platform shoe. But I think when you're doing any kind of leg work, barefoot shoes, I feel like really help.
At Iron Summit, we are about getting everything we can out of our workouts and everyday lives. If you aren't wearing a pair of barefoot or wide toe box trainers, you are leaving gains on the table. The Sashi Athletics Ronin Ichi Minimalist Trainer is a perfect barefoot shoe. Not only does it perform like other major brands on the market, it is actually good looking. Even my wife says so. Get a pair today for 10% off with the code IronSummit10. Link is in the bio.
I feel like you can feel the ground a lot more, feel a lot more stable, and there's less like power leakage. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of them. I think underrated, and I'll say like just because most people don't even think about this. It's like one of the ways you can assess if someone's like really into what they're doing in the gym is what footwear they're wearing. And it's not like barefoot style training shoes, unless they're Sashis. Where our boys
shout out
over at Sashis. Yeah, those actually look pretty cool, but most barefoot style training shoes do not look cool. But I think it's also important to like not the toe shoes, because those are actually like restricting your foot more than a traditional shoe. But barefoot style training shoes just mean like there's very little under your foot. So you're like basically standing on the ground and they're wide in the toe box so your toes can spread out and you can produce more power. I also think they're just really good for foot health. Like most people today, like by the time they're 40, 50, end up with bunions. Their feet are kind of ugly and messed up. So they allow your foot to kind of spread out a little more. And it probably depends on how wide your foot is naturally. Like I have super wide feet naturally. So as soon as I got in a pair, I was like, whoa, where have these been? If you have a more narrow foot where like traditional shoes don't really squish you as much, maybe it's not as big of a deal.
Yeah.
But for your foot health, but I'm definitely one of the people that I'm a big fan of them. It's like hard for me to wear normal shoes now. Yeah. Because my feet have spread out a little bit and I feel uncomfortable in normal shoes.
Yeah, I do think it's such a low barrier to entry too. Like, I mean, Sashi athletic shoes, like what they're like $95, maybe 85 with our discount code. Not that that's what we were talking about, but like
Yeah.
they're sweet, man. It's not super expensive. They last forever. And I think that you realize where you're stepping. And the reason I got into barefoot shoes, honestly, is like I got bad ankles. You know, I had an ankle surgery, and when I'm in barefoot shoes, I like actually feel the ground instead of accidentally rolling my ankle on stuff. Like I can feel when the ground's uneven, and I'm like more aware of where I'm walking. Um, so
Yeah, it feels cool. Like you walk around like public, and at first you're like, whoa, I feel like pebbles in the asphalt, and like it's just like a different experience.
yeah,
The
yeah. I
biggest
think
argument I've heard against them is you're shorter. Because you're barefoot, you're standing on the ground. You don't
that
get that
is,
little like half inch you get from like cowboy boots. You're like an inch and a half, but like these, you're just like you're on the ground. You are no ego in these. They look dumb and you're on the ground. So, except for
it's a great ad. Get Sashi
yeah,
Athletics. Nah, that's you know what, man. I'm married. It's all right. I'm cool with being a half inch shorter because I'm wearing shoes that make me feel good.
someone said that to me the other day. They're like, "Gosh, I really want a pair of barefoot shoes, but I'm gonna be so short in them."
Just training them. You're in them an hour a day. Get over it.
Yeah,
That's funny. So he needs some high heels,
yeah.
but
That's by that logic, yeah, you should be wearing high heels.
all right, Max. I think I'd love to hear your take on this. Training to failure.
Oh, I'm gonna say underrated.
Okay.
Because I think most people are not actually training to failure. From that standpoint alone, I think it's underrated. I think if you can learn where your failure point is, then you can much more accurately judge your training in general. You can start using advanced training principles like RPE or RIR. That being said, that's like you can definitely overdo training to failure as well. I've certainly been there. But I do think, and I know there's like science on this is not clear at all. I've seen so many studies saying training to failure is like the best way to grow. And then I've seen a lot of studies saying you can grow just as much training at an 8 or a 9 RPE. I think that's really hard to study though, because it is such a subjective, like failure is very subjective, and the tougher you get mentally, the better shape you get in, failure changes. But I do think it's good to do, especially to know where your limits are. And also, I've seen great results training to failure. You just can't overdo it and get injured.
Yeah, I agree, man. I think the other thing about training to failure is like, I think undoubtedly, like if you're training to failure, you just like you can feel your muscles, like they have no option but to grow, and so it's like I know it works. I think the hard part about training to failure is to bring that kind of intensity to training every single day. It's tough to do and recover and feel good because you have like one or two really hard workouts back to back in a week. You're kind of shot the rest of the week. But it's something that I'm not really sure where I stand on it, because in some ways I'm like, I think this is probably the shortest path. This is a really great way to put on muscle and to make progress. And then in some ways I'm like, if you're looking at overall volume over the course of 6 months, not 6 days, like the better track is like having the optimal recovery, rest, and stimulus. And so I don't really know where I play on this. And I feel like I kind of like buoy between like trying to make sure that I'm not overdoing it, and then like, hey, I'm really trying to grow right now and push and train hard, and to failure
Yeah.
where you don't feel good the next day with.
Yeah. I think anything you do in training is like the best version of training is what you can do maximally. And I mean maximally, not like in terms of weight, but from terms of effort or volume or weight, whatever metric you want to look at. whatever you can do maximally, and then recover from.
Yeah.
That's the most effective training dose.
But
And recovering from it, that's the key, because you have to be eating enough to recover from it. There has to be enough time in between your workouts. So if you're like an in-season wrestler, training to failure is a terrible idea, because you're going to have to go practice that afternoon and compete later that week, right? So that's like, you can't recover from it. But if you're like right now, you're trying to get to 200 pounds and you're eating a ton of food, then it's probably a really great thing, as long as you can recover from it.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think my issue with it though is there's also a like uh your body's pretty amazing and can like handle a lot more than you think it can. And part of it is like you got to push those boundaries to get your body's limit to increase. Like you can recover better once you like push it a little bit further than you were supposed to. Um, and I think about, you ever seen that Iron Cowboy documentary?
Mm-mm. I
Dude
know what it was, but yeah.
He's doing like Ironmans every day. And he had this huge dip in his, like he was like 50 in 50 states. And he was a wrestler actually. But he was doing like,
of course,
his training went like this. And then he ended up getting stronger. Like he started
you
to
start
like,
to adapt to it.
yeah. And
Yeah.
so I think that's like a real thing where, and lifestyle is real. Like it's tough to train really hard to failure every day when you're getting crushed at work and doing, 12-hour days and you're not sleeping and your food's not, you're not hitting your macros every day. But I do think your body's resilient and your body adapts to it a lot better than we think. So I don't really know where I stand on that. That's something I have no idea where I fall. Yeah.
It is super new. That one's like maybe the most nuanced one we've talked about here.
Yeah. Did I ask? I asked you that one.
Yeah. Last one. What's a good one here for Ryan? Let's do, I want to end with a really hot topic. This is a hot topic. We'll do this one. GLP-1 drugs for weight loss.
Overrated. I fundamentally think like they got a place. If you're 600 pounds and the alternative is you're not going to be able to lose weight, I think it's a good idea. For 99.99% of people, you're not changing the habits. There's some alarming things, like anything that's new that seemingly has zero downside effects, I just don't trust. So I'd be really cautious of just taking something so you can lose 20 pounds and possibly cut, 10 years off your life or develop, some kind of disease. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. That being said, like I understand they have their place, but I don't think it's the one size fits all. I think you should go a lot of different avenues before you start looking down that path. And these drug companies are making a bunch of money off of it. So I don't know. I just don't trust us. So
Yeah. Well, I think that's a healthy skepticism. I'll go overrated for one reason alone. Everything you just said, by withstanding that, is if you want to get on them and have your weight loss be permanent, you got to stay on them, because there's a lot of data on the rebound effect, because you're artificially changing your body's set point, and then you get off of them and your body wants to get back to the set point it was at. So it's a little bit like, if you want to take testosterone or something that is like an exogenous hormone, like you got to probably be willing to be on that for the rest of your life. That's the same with these GLP-1 drugs, at least from what I've seen, and what the science says. So, but I don't know, maybe that'll change. I've also, to play devil's advocate, I've heard there's a lot of like not other health benefits. Like, I've heard of neuroprotective benefits. There's certain scientists and people I really trust who are a big fan of them. But overall, I would say be wary.
I think it's too early too, where if you want to risk something like that, like go right ahead. I would wait for, data, not just like, hey, we've done a study on this. It's like, let's get, 50 years of data on this before you can conclusively tell me like this isn't gonna have downstream effects. So I don't know. I'm just somebody that like, especially with something that's possibly irreversible, maybe it's great. Maybe it's the next best thing. But also on the flip side, if I think there's other ways to do it where you're not necessarily taking an unnecessary risk in my mind.
Yep. So we'll wrap it with that one. Hot topic.
Money, over
Good
under.
stuff. Over under special episode.
I think we got the overs club, dude. I don't think we went under.
We didn't go underrated on that many stuff. Like creatine, training to failure. What else? That was maybe it.
There was one we disagreed on.
Which one?
I don't remember.
Oh, high frequency training. You went underrated. All right. Good stuff.
Money.